Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez sorted through medical supply requisitions in the cramped administrative office, her fingers moving efficiently across keyboard keys that clicked in the sterile silence. The afternoon sun filtered through dusty windows, casting shadows across towers of paperwork that seemed to multiply daily. Before we dive into this story, I have to ask, where are you watching from today? Drop a comment and let me know what state or country you are tuning in from, because this story about underestimation and hidden strength might hit differently, depending on where you have seen this kind of dismissive treatment yourself. The supply closet door slammed open with unnecessary force. Master Sergeant Blake Thompson strutted in, his combat boots echoing against linoleum floors with deliberate authority. Behind him followed 3 junior Marines, their expressions already molded into matching smirks of anticipated entertainment. "Rodriguez," Thompson barked, his voice carrying the practiced disdain of someone who enjoyed wielding power over those he considered beneath him. "Still playing with your little spreadsheets, I see." His eyes swept over her workspace with obvious contempt. Lingering on the medical journals she kept stacked beside regulation supply manuals. Elena continued typing without looking up, her expression remaining professionally neutral. The requisition for field surgical supplies was 3 days overdue, and wounded Marines in forward positions could not afford delays caused by administrative posturing. "What do you need, Master Sergeant?" she replied evenly. Thompson stepped closer, positioning himself to loom over her desk. The junior Marines shifted behind him, sensing the beginning of what had become a familiar routine. "Need." He laughed, the sound harsh in the confined space. "I need real Marines handling real Marine business, not some clinic refugee playing soldier with medical forms." Elena finally raised her eyes to meet his gaze. Her expression remained unchanged, but something flickered in the depths of her brown eyes that Thompson was too arrogant to recognize as dangerous. "I handle medical logistics for this entire forward operating base," she said quietly. "Every bandage, every surgical instrument, every unit of blood that keeps Marines alive crosses this desk." Thompson waved his hand dismissively. "Paperwork medic," he sneered. "You sit in air conditioning while real Marines bleed in the field." The junior Marines behind him chuckled on cue, their laughter mixing with the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. "When was the last time you even touched a patient, Rodriguez? When was the last time you saw real combat?" Elena turned back to her computer screen, her fingers resuming their steady rhythm across the keyboard. The requisition form demanded her attention more than Thompson's predictable theater. She had learned long ago that some battles were won through patience rather than immediate confrontation. "Look at her," Thompson continued for his audience, gesturing toward Elena with exaggerated disgust, hiding behind her desk like the coward she is. "This is what integration gets us. Soft Marines who run to paperwork when things get tough." His voice grew louder, feeding off the responsive laughter from his followers. The office fell silent except for the clicking of Elena's keyboard and the distant sound of helicopters approaching the landing zone. Through the window, she could see actual wounded Marines being transported from a convoy that had hit an improvised explosive device 20 kilometers north. Real Marines who needed real medical supplies that were delayed because of interruptions like this one. Thompson leaned across her desk, his face inches from her computer monitor. "I have been watching you, Rodriguez," he said in a lower voice meant to sound threatening. "Taking notes on your performance. Building a case for why soft Marines like you do not belong in combat zones." His breath smelled of coffee and authority unchecked. Elena saved her work and turned to face him fully. Her expression remained calm, but her posture straightened slightly. "What kind of case, Master Sergeant?" she asked quietly. "The kind that gets you transferred back to some nice, safe hospital stateside where you can file reports and stay out of the way of real warriors." Thompson straightened, apparently satisfied with his threat. "This forward operating base needs Marines who can handle pressure, not clinic nurses playing dress-up." Elena nodded slowly, as if considering his words carefully. She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a thick folder marked with medical classification codes. The folder was worn from frequent handling, its edges softened by months of careful documentation. "Is that your professional assessment?" she asked. Thompson glanced at the folder with dismissive curiosity. "What is that supposed to be? More paperwork? More excuses why you cannot handle real Marine duties?" Elena opened the folder, revealing pages of detailed medical procedures, tactical evacuation protocols, and field surgery techniques. Each page was covered in her precise handwriting, annotated with practical modifications based on forward operating base conditions. "Just some reading material I have been working on during my downtime," she said quietly. Thompson did not bother to examine the contents. "Reading material," he scoffed. "Perfect. The paperwork medic reads about medicine instead of practicing it." His followers laughed again, their amusement echoing off the walls of the small office. Elena closed the folder and returned it to her drawer. Through the window, she watched the wounded Marines being carried into the medical facility, their injuries demanding immediate attention from medics who understood that competence mattered more than perception. The helicopter rotors wound down, leaving in temporary quiet that made Thompson's continued laughter seem particularly hollow. "You know what, Rodriguez," Thompson said, apparently deciding to escalate his harassment. "I think it is time we tested your actual medical skills. See if all that paperwork translates to real-world performance when Marines are counting on you." Elena turned back to her computer, her expression unchanged. "I look forward to that opportunity, Master Sergeant," she replied quietly. Thompson paused, momentarily thrown by her lack of defensive reaction. His followers shuffled behind him, sensing their leader's slight confusion but unsure how to respond. Most Marines would have either argued back or shown signs of intimidation by now. "You look forward to it," Thompson repeated slowly. "We will see about that, Rodriguez. We will definitely see about that." He turned and headed for the door, his boots striking the floor with less authority than when he had entered. Elena watched them leave through the reflection in her computer monitor, then returned her attention to the medical requisition form that still demanded completion. Outside, the wounded Marines had been successfully transferred to the medical facility where competent hands would treat injuries that required both technical skill and calm judgment under pressure. Her phone buzzed with a text message from the medical facility chief requesting emergency surgical supplies for the incoming casualties. Elena quickly authorized the release of the requested materials, her fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. As she worked, Elena could still hear Thompson's voice echoing in the corridor outside, regaling other Marines with his account of putting the paperwork medic in her place. His laughter carried through the thin walls, mixing with the everyday sounds of a forward operating base where appearances often mattered more than actual competence. Elena completed the supply authorization and moved on to updating medical evacuation procedures based on recent field reports. The work required concentration and expertise that her harassers would never understand or appreciate. But understanding and appreciation were luxuries that wounded Marines could not afford. The afternoon wore on with the steady rhythm of administrative duties that kept combat operations functioning smoothly. Elena processed requests, updated inventories, and coordinated logistics with the quiet efficiency that had made her indispensable despite Thompson's campaign of ridicule. Through her window, she could see Marines conducting equipment maintenance and preparing for evening patrol rotations. Each of them carried medical supplies that had crossed her desk, equipment that could mean the difference between life and death in combat situations Thompson had never experienced firsthand. Elena opened her desk drawer again and retrieved the worn folder Thompson had dismissed so easily. The medical procedures inside represented months of careful study and practical innovation, techniques developed during quiet hours when others assumed she was merely filing reports. She turned to a section marked Rapid Evacuation Protocols and began updating the procedures based on feedback from today's casualty reports. The work was detailed and demanding, requiring both theoretical knowledge and practical understanding of battlefield conditions. As evening approached, Elena prepared to close her office and transition to her second shift duties in the medical facility. Thompson's threats and ridicule would continue tomorrow, but wounded Marines needed competent medical care regardless of administrative politics. She locked her desk drawers and gathered her medical journals, preparing for another night of hands-on patient care that her harassers never witnessed. The competence they questioned in daylight would be demonstrated in darkness, where perception mattered less than performance. 3 weeks passed with Thompson's harassment intensifying daily. Elena arrived at her office each morning to find her medical supply forms deliberately scattered across the floor, or her computer monitor turned off mid-process, forcing her to restart complex logistics calculations that took hours to complete. The medical facility chief, Captain Morrison, had grown increasingly impatient with delays in supply deliveries. He summoned Elena to his office on a Tuesday morning when ammunition and medical supplies for forward positions remained stuck in administrative processing for the third consecutive day. Rodriguez, Morrison said without looking up from his own paperwork, I am getting complaints from battalion commanders about delayed medical equipment. These delays are affecting combat readiness and putting Marines at risk. His voice carried the tired frustration of an officer dealing with problems he did not fully understand. Elena stood at attention, holding a thick folder containing documentation of Thompson's interference. Sir, there have been systematic disruptions to the supply chain processing that I have been documenting for review, she replied professionally. Morrison finally looked up, his expression skeptical. Systematic disruptions. That sounds like excuse-making, Rodriguez. Either you can handle this job, or you cannot. I do not want to hear about obstacles. I want to see results. Elena opened her folder and placed 3 pages of detailed incident reports on Morrison's desk. These document specific instances of supply form tampering, computer system interference, and deliberate obstruction of medical logistics operations, she explained quietly. Morrison glanced at the papers without reading them carefully. Rodriguez, I do not have time for administrative complaints. Figure out how to work around whatever personality conflicts you are having and get medical supplies moving efficiently. That is your job. Elena retrieved the papers and closed her folder. Understood, sir, she replied evenly. As she left Morrison's office, Elena passed Thompson in the corridor. He was laughing with 2 other senior non-commissioned officers about something that made them all glance in her direction with obvious amusement. One of them made a comment about paperwork Marines that triggered fresh laughter from the group. That afternoon, Elena discovered that her medical evacuation helicopter request forms had been deleted from the computer system entirely. The deletion had occurred during her lunch break when Thompson had access to the administrative office. Recreating the forms required 4 hours of work that delayed critical equipment deliveries to forward operating bases. Elena methodically recreated each form while maintaining detailed documentation of the sabotage. Her incident log had grown to 12 pages of precisely recorded interference, each entry backed up with timestamps and witness observations when available. During evening medical facility duties, Elena worked alongside corpsmen who respected her clinical skills. Petty Officer First Class Martinez watched her handle a complex trauma case with obvious admiration for her technical competence under pressure. Staff Sergeant Martinez said quietly as they cleaned equipment after treating casualties from a roadside bombing. I do not understand why Master Sergeant Thompson keeps saying you are not qualified for field medicine. I have watched you handle everything from surgical assists to mass casualty triage, and you are better than most of the corpsmen I have worked with. Elena continued cleaning medical instruments with methodical precision. People see what they expect to see, Martinez, she replied without elaboration. Martinez nodded thoughtfully. Well, what I see is someone who knows her business. If I get wounded out there, I want you working on me, not some of the showboat medics who talk tough but fumble when things get serious. Elena finished with the instruments and moved to update patient charts. Her handwriting was precise and efficient, capturing critical medical information that could save lives during shift changes or emergency transfers. The next morning brought fresh harassment when Thompson announced during the daily briefing that he would be conducting surprise inspections of Elena's work to ensure administrative efficiency. His announcement drew knowing looks from his followers who understood this represented escalation rather than legitimate oversight. Thompson's first surprise inspection occurred during Elena's busiest period when multiple casualty evacuation requests demanded immediate processing. He arrived with 2 witnesses and began questioning every procedural decision while wounded Marines waited for transportation approval. Rodriguez, Thompson said loudly enough for nearby Marines to hear. Explain why this evacuation request took 40 minutes to process when regulation timelines call for 30-minute maximum response. Elena continued working while answering. Sir, this particular request required coordination with 3 different helicopter units due to weather conditions affecting the primary landing zone. The 40-minute processing time included real-time communication with flight operations to ensure safe evacuation routes. Thompson made exaggerated notes on his clipboard. 40 minutes, he repeated for emphasis. That is Marines bleeding while our paperwork medic figures out how to do her job. He turned to his witnesses with theatrical disgust. This is exactly the kind of administrative failure I have been documenting. Elena saved her work and turned to face Thompson directly. Master Sergeant, the Marines in question were successfully evacuated with 0 casualties during transport. The additional coordination time ensured safe passage through hostile airspace using optimal flight paths. Thompson waved dismissively. Excuses, Rodriguez. In real combat situations, Marines need medics who can make decisions quickly, not administrators who hide behind procedure manuals. His voice grew louder as he sensed an audience gathering to watch the confrontation. Elena nodded toward her computer screen, which displayed the complex logistics tracking system she managed single-handedly. This system processes medical supply requests for 12 forward operating bases covering a sector with 4,000 Marines, she said quietly. Every bandage, surgical kit, and medical evacuation that keeps Marines alive flows through these procedures. Thompson stepped closer, positioning himself to dominate the conversation through physical presence. You talk about keeping Marines alive, Rodriguez, but when was the last time you actually saved a Marine life yourself? When was the last time you handled real combat medicine instead of hiding behind spreadsheets? Elena met his gaze without flinching. The medical supply system I manage has supported over 200 medical evacuations this month with 0 equipment failures or supply shortages, she replied evenly. Thompson laughed harshly. Supply statistics, he said mockingly. Perfect answer from our paperwork medic. You cannot even answer a simple question about hands-on medical experience because you do not have any. Elena turned back to her computer where urgent supply requests continued arriving from forward positions. The conversation was delaying critical logistics support that Marines depended on for survival. Master Sergeant, I have 18 pending medical supply requests that require immediate attention, she said professionally. Thompson made another note on his clipboard with exaggerated emphasis. Refuses to engage with legitimate performance questions, he said loud enough for his gathering audience to hear clearly. More evidence of someone who cannot handle real Marine responsibilities. Elena continued working while Thompson concluded his performance for the assembled Marines. His followers nodded approvingly at his documentation of her supposed failures, while he promised more frequent inspections to ensure administrative accountability. After Thompson departed with his witnesses, Elena noticed several junior Marines lingering near her office. They had watched the confrontation with expressions that suggested confusion about what they had actually witnessed versus what Thompson claimed they should have seen. Corporal Williams approached Elena's desk hesitantly. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, he said quietly, my platoon has never had problems getting medical supplies when we need them. Your system has always worked perfectly for us in the field. Elena continued processing supply requests without looking up. Just doing my job, Corporal, she replied. Williams glanced around to ensure Thompson had truly departed before continuing. Ma'am, some of us know the difference between real competence and political games. Master Sergeant Thompson talks a lot, but when my Marines need medical support, your name is the one that comes up as someone who gets things done right. Elena finally looked up from her computer. I appreciate that, Corporal Williams. Make sure your Marines always have the medical supplies they need. That is what matters. Williams nodded and departed, leaving Elena alone with the mounting stack of urgent supply requests that demanded her immediate attention. The morning's harassment had cost precious time that could have been spent ensuring Marines in forward positions received life-saving equipment without delay. Elena opened her incident log and added detailed documentation of Thompson's latest inspection and its impact on critical medical logistics operations. The interference was becoming more systematic and aggressive, requiring her to work longer hours to maintain the same level of support for combat operations. As afternoon approached, Elena received an emergency request for specialized surgical equipment from a forward operating base that had taken heavy casualties during a reconnaissance mission. The request required immediate coordination with multiple supply chains and transport assets to ensure rapid delivery of critical medical gear. Elena worked quickly and efficiently, her fingers flying across multiple computer systems as she coordinated complex logistics under time pressure. The specialized equipment was approved, packaged, and loaded onto transport helicopters within 25 minutes of the initial request. The successful coordination demonstrated exactly the kind of rapid response capability that kept Marines alive in combat situations. But Thompson's interference had made such efficiency increasingly difficult to maintain consistently under the pressure of constant harassment and deliberate obstruction. Elena updated her documentation and prepared for another evening of hands-on medical work in the treatment facility, where her clinical skills would be tested without the benefit of administrative protection or political maneuvering. Colonel James Patterson arrived at the forward operating base for his quarterly inspection on a Thursday morning when monsoon rains had turned the region into a maze of swollen rivers and impassable roads. His reputation for thorough evaluation preceded him, and every Marine on the base understood that Patterson's reports could make or break careers. Elena was processing emergency medical supply requests when Patterson's aide informed her that the colonel wanted to review logistics operations immediately. She gathered her documentation folders and reported to the command post, where Patterson waited with his inspection team. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, Patterson said without preamble, "I have been reviewing medical supply efficiency reports for this sector. Your forward operating base shows remarkable statistics compared to other installations in theater. 0 critical supply shortages, exceptional evacuation coordination times, and outstanding medical equipment availability ratings." Elena stood at attention, holding her documentation folders. "Thank you, sir," she replied professionally. Patterson studied a thick report on his tablet computer. "These numbers are particularly impressive given the challenging terrain and weather conditions your area of operations experiences. Walk me through your logistics procedures so I can understand how you achieve this level of efficiency." Elena opened her primary documentation folder and began explaining the comprehensive supply chain management system she had developed over months of careful refinement. She detailed real-time inventory tracking, predictive supply ordering based on mission tempo analysis, and streamlined evacuation request processing that reduced response times by 40%. Patterson listened intently, occasionally asking detailed questions that demonstrated his understanding of complex logistics challenges. His inspection team took notes while Elena explained technical procedures that went far beyond basic supply management protocols. "This is sophisticated systems analysis," Patterson observed. "Where did you learn advanced logistics management like this? Your personnel file indicates administrative specialist training, but these procedures require graduate-level supply chain expertise." Elena hesitated briefly before answering. "Sir, I completed my master's degree in logistics management and operations research before enlisting. I also hold certifications in emergency medical systems design and trauma care coordination protocols." Patterson's eyebrows raised slightly. "Your education credentials are not reflected in your current duty assignment, Staff Sergeant. Why are you processing basic supply forms when you are qualified to design entire medical logistics systems?" Elena remained at attention while considering her response carefully. "Sir, I have been assigned to administrative duties based on command assessment of my capabilities and experience levels." Patterson turned to his aide and spoke quietly for several moments before addressing Elena again. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, I want you to give me a complete briefing on your background and qualifications. Leave nothing out." Elena opened her secondary documentation folder and began revealing the depth of her professional background. Master's degree in logistics management from Georgetown University. Advanced certification in emergency medical systems from Johns Hopkins. 5 years of civilian experience designing supply chain systems for major medical centers before enlisting. Patterson listened with growing interest as Elena detailed experience that included trauma center logistics coordination, mass casualty event planning, and medical evacuation system optimization for civilian emergency services. Her qualifications represented expertise that most field-grade officers lacked. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez," Patterson said slowly, "you are arguably the most qualified medical logistics specialist currently deployed in this theater of operations. How long have you been assigned to basic administrative duties?" Elena consulted her records. 8 months, sir, since arriving at this forward operating base." Patterson made notes on his tablet with obvious displeasure. Who made the decision to assign someone with your qualifications to entry-level administrative work instead of systems management or staff positions where your expertise would be properly utilized? Elena remained silent, unwilling to directly implicate Thompson without specific questions that required factual responses. Patterson studied her personnel file more carefully. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, I see multiple efficiency reports filed by Master Sergeant Thompson questioning your competence and recommending reassignment to stateside administrative positions. How do you reconcile those reports with the exceptional performance statistics your work has generated? Elena opened her incident documentation folder and placed it on Patterson's desk. Sir, I have maintained detailed records of systematic interference with medical logistics operations that have impacted my ability to perform assigned duties efficiently. Patterson accepted the folder and began reading Elena's meticulously documented reports of harassment, sabotage, and deliberate obstruction. His expression grew increasingly serious as he reviewed timestamps, witness statements, and evidence of Thompson's campaign to undermine her work. This documentation indicates deliberate sabotage of critical medical supply operations, Patterson said grimly. Master Sergeant Thompson's actions have potentially endangered Marine lives by interfering with medical logistics support to forward positions. Elena maintained her professional composure while Patterson continued reviewing her evidence. The documentation represented months of careful record-keeping that captured Thompson's escalating harassment in precise detail. Patterson turned to his aide again. Lieutenant Crawford, I want Master Sergeant Thompson and Captain Morrison in this office immediately for questioning under formal investigation protocols. Elena felt a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere as Patterson's inspection transformed from routine evaluation to serious investigation of command failures and misconduct. The colonel's demeanor had changed from impressed curiosity to professional anger at discovering systematic abuse of a highly qualified Marine. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, Patterson said, while we wait for Thompson and Morrison to arrive, I want you to explain exactly how your current logistics system works and what improvements you would recommend if given proper authority and resources to implement comprehensive changes. Elena opened her technical planning folder and revealed detailed proposals for medical logistics improvements that she had developed during off-duty hours. The proposals included system integration recommendations, efficiency optimization protocols, and emergency response procedures that could revolutionize medical support throughout the theater. Patterson studied the proposals with obvious amazement. These recommendations represent months of professional-level analysis and system design work. You developed these on your own initiative while being assigned to basic data entry tasks. Elena nodded. Yes, sir. I identified multiple opportunities for improvement and developed comprehensive solutions during available time between assigned duties. Patterson shook his head with apparent disgust at the waste of her talents. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, you have been criminally underutilized. Your proposals could improve medical logistics efficiency across multiple forward operating bases and potentially save significant numbers of Marine lives through faster response times and better resource allocation. Elena remained at attention while Patterson continued reviewing her technical work. The proposals demonstrated expertise that belonged at staff-level positions, not basic administrative assignments. The door opened and Thompson entered with Captain Morrison, both appearing confused about being summoned during routine inspection activities. Their confusion quickly transformed to concern when they noticed Elena's documentation folders spread across Patterson's desk. Master Sergeant Thompson, Patterson said without looking up from Elena's incident reports, I have been reviewing medical logistics operations and have discovered some disturbing irregularities that require immediate explanation. Thompson glanced nervously at Elena before responding. Sir, if this concerns Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's performance issues, I have been documenting her inability to handle assigned responsibilities and recommending appropriate corrective action. Patterson finally looked up from the documentation with an expression of controlled fury. Master Sergeant Thompson, according to this evidence, you have been systematically sabotaging medical supply operations, harassing a highly qualified Marine, and filing false performance reports to cover up your own misconduct. Thompson's face flushed red as he realized the scope of Elena's documentation. Sir, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez has been unable to perform basic administrative duties efficiently and has been making excuses for her failures by blaming others for her inadequate performance. Patterson stood and picked up Elena's master's degree documentation. Master Sergeant Thompson, were you aware that Staff Sergeant Rodriguez holds advanced degrees in logistics management and emergency medical systems designed from prestigious civilian universities? Thompson's expression shifted to confusion as he processed information that contradicted everything he had assumed about Elena's background and qualifications. Sir, her personnel file indicates basic administrative specialist training with no advanced education credentials listed. Patterson turned to Morrison with obvious displeasure. Captain Morrison, how did you assign a Marine with graduate-level logistics expertise to data entry tasks without recognizing her qualifications or investigating her background thoroughly? Morrison studied Elena with new awareness as he realized the magnitude of his oversight. Sir, I relied on initial assessment reports that indicated basic competency levels requiring close supervision and entry-level assignments. Patterson slammed Elena's incident documentation on his desk with enough force to make both Thompson and Morrison flinch noticeably. Gentlemen, you have wasted the talents of one of the most qualified medical logistics specialists in the Marine Corps while allowing systematic harassment and sabotage of critical combat support operations. Elena maintained her position at attention while watching Thompson's confident arrogance crumble as he realized that his target possessed credentials and documentation that exposed his actions as both incompetent and malicious. The room fell silent except for the sound of monsoon rain against the windows and the distant noise of helicopter operations that depended on the medical logistics system Elena had maintained despite months of deliberate interference and professional sabotage. Colonel Patterson opened Elena's incident documentation folder and spread the contents across the conference table with methodical precision. Each page represented documented evidence of systematic harassment and sabotage that had occurred over months of careful record-keeping. Master Sergeant Thompson, Patterson said, his voice carrying the authority of 30 years of Marine Corps leadership, I am going to read specific incidents from Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's documentation, and you will explain each one under formal investigation protocols. Thompson shifted uncomfortably in his chair, while Captain Morrison watched with growing awareness that his own career was now at risk for failing to investigate obvious misconduct within his command structure. Patterson picked up the first incident report. September 15th, Thompson accessed Rodriguez's computer terminal during lunch break and deleted completed medical evacuation helicopter requests, requiring 4 hours of reconstruction work that delayed critical equipment delivery to Forward Operating Base Charlie. Explain this incident, Master Sergeant. Thompson's face reddened as he realized the precision of Elena's documentation. Sir, I may have accidentally interfered with computer files while conducting legitimate supervision of administrative procedures. Any delays were unintentional results of ensuring proper oversight. Patterson picked up a second document. September 22nd, Thompson deliberately scattered completed supply requisition forms across Rodriguez's office floor and turned off her computer mid-process, forcing restart of complex logistics calculations. This incident was witnessed by Corporal Williams and documented with photographs Rodriguez took before cleaning up the mess. Thompson glanced desperately at Morrison for support before answering. Sir, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez consistently leaves her workspace disorganized and frequently fails to save her work properly. I was attempting to demonstrate proper administrative standards. Patterson held up a photograph showing Elena's normally organized desk covered with scattered papers. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez maintains detailed organization standards as evidenced by efficiency reports from multiple sources. This photograph shows deliberate vandalism, not organizational training. Elena remained at attention while Patterson systematically dismantled Thompson's explanations with evidence that demonstrated premeditation and malicious intent rather than legitimate supervision or training activities. Patterson continued reading from Elena's documentation. October 3rd, Thompson announced surprise inspections specifically timed to interfere with Rodriguez's processing of urgent medical supply requests during peak casualty evacuation periods. These inspections served no legitimate administrative purpose and directly endangered marine lives through delayed medical support. Thompson attempted another defensive explanation. Sir, surprise inspections are standard procedure for ensuring administrative efficiency and catching performance problems that might otherwise be hidden during routine operations. Patterson placed Elena's technical planning folder on the table. Master Sergeant Thompson, did you review Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's qualifications and background before initiating these performance improvement measures? Thompson hesitated before answering. Sir, I relied on initial assessment reports indicating basic competency levels requiring intensive supervision and corrective action. Patterson opened Elena's credential documentation. Master Sergeant Thompson, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez holds a master's degree in logistics management from Georgetown University, advanced certification in emergency medical systems designed from Johns Hopkins, and 5 years of civilian experience designing supply chain systems for major medical centers. Did you investigate her background before determining she required remedial training? Thompson's expression shifted to confusion and then to dawning realization that he had been harassing someone whose credentials far exceeded his own. Sir, her personnel file did not reflect advanced education or professional experience when she was assigned to basic administrative duties. Patterson turned to Morrison with obvious displeasure. Captain Morrison, how did advanced education credentials and professional experience disappear from Rodriguez's personnel file when she was assigned to this forward operating base? Morrison studied Elena with new understanding as he realized the magnitude of administrative failure that had occurred under his command. Sir, I received standard personnel transfer documentation indicating basic administrative specialist qualification requiring entry-level assignment and close supervision. Patterson opened another folder from Elena's documentation. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, walk us through your actual background and explain how your credentials were omitted from personnel files received by this command. Elena opened her personal records folder and began revealing the complete scope of her professional background. Georgetown University master's degree in logistics management with specialized focus on medical supply chain optimization. Johns Hopkins certification in emergency medical systems design and trauma care coordination. 5 years designing logistics systems for major civilian medical centers, including mass casualty event planning and medical evacuation coordination. Patterson listened with growing anger as Elena detailed qualifications that should have resulted in staff positions or specialized assignments rather than basic data entry tasks under intensive supervision. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, Patterson asked, why did you enlist in the Marine Corps instead of pursuing civilian career advancement with these credentials? Elena maintained professional composure while answering. Sir, my father was killed during medical evacuation operations in Afghanistan. I enlisted to ensure marine medical logistics systems receive the same level of professional expertise that civilian medical systems demand. Patterson made notes while Thompson's confident arrogance completely collapsed as he realized he had been systematically harassing the daughter of a fallen Marine who possessed expertise specifically relevant to saving Marine lives in combat situations. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, Patterson continued, explain how you maintained exceptional medical logistics performance despite systematic interference and harassment documented in these incident reports. Elena opened her technical procedures folder and detailed the comprehensive systems she had developed to work around Thompson's sabotage. Backup computer systems, redundant documentation procedures, and streamlined protocols that maintained efficiency despite deliberate obstruction of normal operations. Patterson studied the technical procedures with obvious admiration. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, you single-handedly maintained medical logistics support for 12 forward operating bases covering 4,000 Marines while dealing with systematic harassment and administrative sabotage. This represents exceptional performance under impossible conditions. Elena nodded acknowledgement while Thompson stared at documentation that proved his target had been far more competent and qualified than he could have imagined. Patterson addressed Thompson directly. Master Sergeant Thompson, your actions have constituted systematic harassment of a highly qualified Marine, deliberate sabotage of critical medical support operations, and filing of false performance reports to cover up misconduct. You have endangered Marine lives through interference with medical logistics systems. Thompson attempted one final defensive response. Sir, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's administrative performance appeared inadequate based on observable metrics and required corrective supervision to ensure proper standards. Patterson slammed Elena's efficiency reports on the table. Master Sergeant Thompson, Rodriguez's medical logistics performance metrics exceed every other installation in this theater of operations. Zero critical supply shortages, exceptional evacuation coordination times, and outstanding equipment availability ratings. Her performance has been exemplary despite your systematic interference. Morrison shifted uncomfortably as he realized his own failures had enabled Thompson's misconduct and wasted the talents of an exceptionally qualified Marine whose expertise could have improved operations throughout the region. Patterson continued his systematic review of Elena's documentation. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, I want you to explain the technical proposals you developed for improving medical logistics operations across multiple forward operating bases. Elena opened her planning documentation and revealed comprehensive system improvement proposals that represented months of professional analysis and design work. Advanced inventory management systems, predictive supply ordering protocols, and integrated evacuation coordination procedures that could revolutionize medical support efficiency. Patterson studied the proposals with obvious amazement. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, these recommendations represent graduate-level systems analysis that could save significant numbers of Marine lives through improved response times and resource allocation. You developed this on your own initiative while being assigned to data entry tasks. Elena confirmed that she had identified improvement opportunities and developed solutions during off-duty time between assigned administrative responsibilities. Patterson turned to Thompson with controlled fury. Master Sergeant Thompson, you have wasted the talents of a Marine whose expertise could have improved medical logistics operations throughout this theater and potentially saved Marine lives through more efficient emergency response systems. Thompson sat in stunned silence as he realized the complete scope of his misjudgment and the professional consequences that would inevitably follow from his systematic harassment of a highly qualified Marine whose credentials exceeded his own understanding. The room fell quiet except for monsoon rain against windows and distant helicopter operations that depended on medical logistics systems Elena had maintained despite months of deliberate sabotage and administrative incompetence that nearly cost Marine lives through delayed medical support. Colonel Patterson closed Elena's documentation folders and reached for his secure communication device. His movements carried the decisive authority of a senior officer who had reached final conclusions about serious misconduct that demanded immediate corrective action. Lieutenant Crawford, Patterson ordered his aide, establish secure communication with General Morrison at Division Headquarters immediately. Priority classification. This situation requires command-level intervention and investigation by higher authority. Thompson's face drained of color as he realized that Patterson was escalating the matter beyond local command authority. The involvement of Division Headquarters meant career-ending consequences for systematic harassment and sabotage of critical combat support operations. Patterson activated his communication device and waited for connection to Division Headquarters. General Morrison, this is Colonel Patterson conducting quarterly inspection at Forward Operating Base Delta. I have discovered serious misconduct requiring immediate investigation and corrective action at command level. Elena maintained her position at attention while listening to Patterson brief Division Headquarters about Thompson's systematic harassment, Morrison's failure to investigate obvious misconduct, and the criminal waste of exceptional medical logistics expertise that could have improved operations throughout the theater. Patterson concluded his communication and turned to address Thompson directly. Master Sergeant Thompson, you are hereby relieved of all supervisory duties pending formal investigation by Division Headquarters. You will report to the Sergeant Major immediately for administrative processing and temporary duty reassignment away from medical logistics operations. Thompson attempted to speak, but Patterson cut him off with a gesture. Master Sergeant Thompson, you have forfeited your right to explanations through systematic misconduct and false reporting that endangered Marine lives. Your relief from duty is effective immediately and non-negotiable. Patterson turned to Morrison with equal severity. Captain Morrison, You are hereby relieved of command pending investigation of your failure to properly utilize qualified personnel and your negligence in allowing systematic harassment within your command structure. Morrison's career collapsed in real time as he realized that his oversight failures had enabled serious misconduct while wasting exceptional expertise that could have saved Marine lives through improved medical logistics efficiency. Patterson addressed Elena for the first time since beginning disciplinary actions. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, you are immediately reassigned to Division Headquarters staff as Senior Medical Logistics Coordinator with authority to implement comprehensive system improvements across all forward operating bases and theater. Elena felt the dramatic reversal of her situation as months of harassment transformed into recognition and authority appropriate to her qualifications and expertise. Patterson continued addressing Elena. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, your technical proposals will be implemented immediately with full division support and resources. You will have direct access to command authority and unlimited logistics support to optimize medical operations throughout the region. Elena acknowledged her new assignment professionally while processing the complete transformation of her circumstances from harassed administrator to senior staff position with theater-wide authority and responsibility. Patterson turned back to Thompson, who sat in stunned silence. Master Sergeant Thompson, your systematic harassment of Staff Sergeant Rodriguez constitutes one of the most serious cases of misconduct I have encountered in 30 years of Marine Corps service. Your actions endangered Marine lives and wasted exceptional expertise during critical combat operations. Thompson finally found his voice to attempt explanation. Sir, I was following standard supervisory procedures based on assessment reports that indicated performance problems requiring corrective action and intensive oversight. Patterson's expression hardened with controlled anger. Master Sergeant Thompson, standard supervisory procedures do not include sabotaging computer systems, destroying completed work, and filing false performance reports to cover up harassment of qualified Marines. Elena watched Thompson's confidence completely evaporate as he realized that his systematic campaign of harassment had been thoroughly documented and would result in career-ending consequences under formal investigation procedures. Patterson addressed his aide again. Lieutenant Crawford, ensure that Master Sergeant Thompson's relief from duty is properly documented and transmitted to Division Headquarters for formal investigation processing. His access to medical logistics systems is revoked immediately. Patterson turned to Elena with obvious respect for her competence and professionalism under impossible circumstances. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, Division Headquarters will provide complete support for implementing your logistics improvement proposals. You will have staff authority and resources to revolutionize medical support operations throughout this theater. Elena accepted her new responsibilities while maintaining professional composure despite the dramatic transformation of her circumstances from harassment victim to senior staff position with authority to implement comprehensive improvements. Patterson continued addressing Elena. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, your documentation of systematic harassment while maintaining exceptional performance under adverse conditions demonstrates leadership qualities that the Marine Corps needs in senior positions. Elena acknowledged Patterson's assessment while processing the complete reversal of power dynamics that had defined her experience at the forward operating base for months of systematic harassment and professional sabotage. Patterson turned back to Morrison with final instructions. Captain Morrison, you will transfer all medical logistics authority to Staff Sergeant Rodriguez immediately. Your administrative failures have compromised combat readiness and wasted exceptional expertise that could have improved operations throughout the region. Morrison complied with obvious reluctance as he realized that his career had been destroyed by failure to recognize talent and prevent misconduct within his command structure. Patterson addressed the room with command authority. Gentlemen, this situation represents complete failure of leadership and professional judgment that endangered Marine lives through systematic harassment and administrative incompetence. The consequences will be swift and appropriate to the seriousness of the misconduct. Elena received her new assignment documentation while Thompson and Morrison faced the immediate destruction of their careers through their own actions and failures. Patterson concluded his intervention with final instructions to Elena. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, you will report to Division Headquarters tomorrow morning to begin implementing comprehensive medical logistics improvements across all forward operating bases. Your expertise will finally receive proper utilization and authority. Elena saluted and acknowledged her new assignment, while watching the complete reversal of circumstances that transformed her from harassment victim to senior staff position with theater-wide authority and recognition of her exceptional qualifications. Thompson departed under guard for administrative processing, while Morrison prepared transfer of authority documentation that ended his command and Elena's months of systematic harassment through his failure to investigate obvious misconduct. The monsoon rain continued against windows while Elena gathered her technical documentation that would now receive division-level support and resources for implementation across multiple forward operating bases where her expertise could improve medical logistics efficiency and save marine lives through better emergency response systems. Patterson shook hands with Elena before departing for division headquarters where her new assignment would provide authority and resources appropriate to her qualifications and the critical importance of medical logistics operations in combat situations where competence meant the difference between life and death. 6 months later, Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez walked through the same medical facility where she had once sorted supply requisitions in obscurity. The hallways buzzed with a different energy now. Junior medics straightened their postures when she passed, their eyes filled with the kind of respect that could not be manufactured or demanded. The river crossing had become legend. 280 Marines evacuated safely through flood waters that claimed equipment and vehicles, but not a single life. The footage from that day played in training facilities across 3 continents, dissected frame by frame to understand how one medic had coordinated an impossible evacuation. Elena entered her new office, the nameplate reading Combat Medical Operations Chief gleaming under fluorescent lights. Through her window, she could see the training grounds where new medics practiced the techniques she had developed during those crucial 40 minutes at the river. Her protocols were now standard curriculum. Colonel Morrison knocked on her doorframe, the same officer who had once dismissed her as paperwork personnel. He entered with obvious discomfort, carrying a folder thick with commendation letters. "Your combat medic cross came through this morning," he said quietly. "Pentagon fast-tracked it." Elena accepted the decoration without ceremony. The weight felt appropriate in her palm, heavier than the ridicule she had carried for years. Morrison lingered awkwardly before speaking again. "I wanted to apologize for my previous assessment of your capabilities." The humility in his voice contrasted sharply with his earlier arrogance. She set the cross on her desk next to a photograph from the river crossing. In it, Marines carried wounded comrades through churning water while she stood chest deep, directing the evacuation with calm precision. "No apology necessary, sir," she replied. Everyone learned something that day. The colonel departed, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts. She opened her desk drawer and retrieved a worn notebook filled with tactical medical procedures she had developed during quiet hours when others assumed she was filing reports. Those same procedures had saved lives when conventional methods would have failed. Her phone buzzed with a text from Captain Hayes, now serving in Afghanistan. "Your river crossing manual just saved 4 of my guys during a firefight extraction. Thank you." Elena smiled and closed the notebook. Outside her window, a new class of medics practiced patient movement drills. Their instructor, a young sergeant who had been present at the river crossing, demonstrated the Rodriguez technique with obvious pride. The same facility that had once echoed with mocking laughter about the paperwork medic now resonated with the serious business of saving lives. Elena had found her place not by demanding respect, but by earning it when everything depended on her competence. She picked up her next assignment briefing, already planning how to improve combat medical response and theater operations. The work continued, but now with the authority her skills had always deserved. What moment in this story resonated most with you? And have you ever had an experience where others underestimated your abilities until a crucial moment proved them wrong?